Mitch, let's talk about another conference that's gotten wild and wacky. This is our little something for the table as we kick off this show. We're going to talk just state of the Big 12. And I don't really have necessarily a format for this or a way we have to take this. I'm not going to lead you in any particular direction, but I just want to talk about this wild and wacky conference. And it's already getting wild and wacky. We'll talk about Arizona and Utah here in just a second, a game we didn't really get to get into on Saturday night, but it really threw this conference, turned it on its head as the Wildcats upset the top 10 ranked Utes in Salt Lake City. Now we're kind of left wondering who are the actual favorites in this conference, because Utah, I think, is still the proverbial favorite if Cam Rising is healthy, but Cam Rising feels like a mythical creature at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not really, we said this in the preview season, there's not really a team that you look at and say, yeah, they don't have a fatal flaw that someone could exploit, right? Whether that's the arm of Avery Johnson being consistent at Kansas State, the defense of Colorado, whether that's already been exploited, the defense of Oklahoma State by multiple teams. So I'm just interested in who do you have in the top tier of the Big 12 after 5 weeks?
Well, as the great Reese Davis has said, the Big 12 is wide. It is not deep. And I don't know that there is a clear-cut answer here. I mean, you mentioned Cam Rising should make Utah the favorite, but Rising kind of feels like a fraternity pledge's grand big. Like, you've seen his composite photo, you know he's around campus, but gosh darn it, like, you never see him at any function. He's more myth than reality at this point. Whenever he returns, whenever he decides to grace the good gridiron with his presence, I think Utah is that cut above. Their loss to Arizona was disappointing in that they were at home. The offense couldn't get anything going, right? What's his name? Isaac Wilson, is that right? The backup quarterback
Wilson
throws 2 interceptions. They could not run the football to save their lives, which I think was a byproduct of Arizona looking at the Oklahoma State game and going, okay, let's just load the box and take away Micah Bernard, and we'll take our chances with the youngster behind center. And it paid off for them. And Arizona was able to get enough points on the board to pull away and make that feel comfortable. I think Kansas State is maybe the next in line for most complete team. I mean, Avery Johnson against bad secondaries can throw the ball down the field. I'm still waiting on him to have a true test, and I don't know if he's going to run into that until Farmageddon against Iowa State. The clones are very quiet this season. I think Rocco Becht is a solid enough quarterback. They haven't been able to run the ball as well as I thought they were going to in the preseason, but that defense is stout. I mean, you can go on down the list. I saw a post today that Texas Tech is the most unheralded team in the Big 12. And
they're 2-0 in conference play.
They are. Their offense is a whole lot of fun. They can't stop anybody, but that hasn't hurt them in conference play yet. So, UCF took a huge hit against Colorado this week. It just, there's truly 1,000 simulations that you can run through. And we did hint at that in the preseason, right? I mean, we joked that as many as 10 or 12 teams could be competing for a spot in Arlington in the last couple of weeks. That really was made in jest, but the truth is there's no one in this conference that has the ability to run and hide very clearly. Right. I think that there are teams that should be able to take that step, but honestly, Trey, until they do, and until they lock out a spot in Arlington, I am game for whatever the Conference of Chaos wants to throw at us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have my pet cats in this conference. I think a lot of people do, and the teams that I tend to root for more than others. But I look down the standings right now. There's only 2 teams that haven't taken a loss just overall, and that's BYU and Iowa State. And there are, 6 teams without a conference loss at this point. 3 of them are 2-0. BYU, Colorado, and Texas Tech are the only teams that are 2-0 in conference play. So it's wide open, to put it simply. If you look at the betting odds, as I pull those up real quick, the betting odds really favor Kansas State, Iowa State, and Utah. There's kind of a tier break after that where Arizona's actually the next odds-on favorite, definitely aided by their win on Saturday night against Utah.
Sure.
But you can make the case for all these teams, and I think that's what makes this so much fun. I guess I would personally draw the line. I think I would put Utah, Kansas State, Iowa State and BYU because they're undefeated in that top tier. I'm still kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with BYU, though. I don't know how you feel about the Cougars at this point.
Well, I don't think their passing game is nearly complete enough to survive the totality of their schedule. Their defense is obviously one of the best in the Big 12, if not the best, right up there, I think, with Utah and Iowa State. Kansas State has rounded into form nicely. So, I do like BYU's ability to compete from that standpoint. I still don't know if the Cougars will be able to run with the horses of the rest of the conference as they proceed down the remainder of their schedule. Would love to be proven wrong. I think Kalani Sitake, who we identified as a hot seat candidate coming into the season, has done a lot to win back the graces of those in Provo. He's obviously a staple of that community and that team. I think it's a great story all around for the Cougars to be succeeding and truly coming out of left field. I mean, we always talk about this. There's bound to be a team that does this every single season, just about in every single conference. None of us had BYU even on that short list of, okay, but just dream with me here, right? BYU was nowhere near that list.
Yeah, we were not. When we joke about 10 teams contending for Arlington, BYU was not
one of the 10.
One of the 10. I think I put those 4 teams, though, in the top tier for right now. Right below that, I have Colorado, West Virginia, UCF. I still like what West Virginia can do, and Arizona. I would throw Arizona in there too. Texas Tech, too much of a half team for me at this point. Just the lack of defense really keeps me from saying they're a true contender or conceivable contender, I guess is how you would call that next year. But I think there's still 8-ish teams that you can make a really compelling case for at this point.
I think the most interesting to me there probably is Colorado, just because I think they need to turn every game into a 7-on-7 contest, but they also played a little bit more run defense on Saturday.
Defense looked really good against UCF.
Yeah. You and I did not give them much credit, and to our defense, there wasn't any reason to give them much credit. We hadn't seen it, but if Colorado's defense is able to get off the field on third down and not get run over like a turnstile in the running game, that offense gives you a chance against anybody in the conference. If they're able to go put up points against an Iowa State or a Utah or a Kansas State, those opponents, there's no reason why they can't make it to Arlington and even hoist a championship at the end of all of this. That offense is as dynamic as I think you're going to find in the country. If they don't have to turn it into a 7-on-7 game, man, that you start to feel a lot more complete about this Colorado team. Now, though, is maybe the hardest point. They've tasted some success. They're getting to, go to social media and clown the haters and respond to comments. Can they handle that success? They couldn't last year. We saw it all fall apart, and it fell apart very quickly. This is new territory for Prime and that entire roster. So we'll see what Colorado does with that success. If they can start to put together some of those pieces, though, it's hard to not absolutely move them up that pecking order.
Yeah, they held UCF to 177 yards on the ground. That was on 44 rushing attempts.
Jeez.
So right at 4 yards a carry. The previous low for the Knights this year was 289 against TCU. So they beat that by over 100 yards. It was a sloppy game at times too, weather-wise in Orlando. So battled a lot more than just the team on the other sideline. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The real test is going to be how they can handle that success. Kansas State goes to Boulder next weekend after a bye week for both of those teams.
Gracious, how about that?